Ever pondered over the question, how will the US change under Trump and Harris in 2024? Today we're here to tease apart that very thought. We find ourselves standing at the crossroads of two very distinct paths, each paved by a different presidential candidate, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Both contenders bring to the table their unique visions for America, visions that could profoundly shape the nation's future. Throughout this discussion, we'll be focusing on some key sectors that these potential leaders could significantly influence. We'll examine the economy, healthcare, and climate change. Three areas that are undeniably at the heart of our nation's well-being. But remember, these aren't just abstract concepts. These are the bread and butter issues that affect every American every day. So brace yourselves as we delve deeper into these potential transformations under Trump and Harris. Or first, let's talk money. What will the economy look like under Trump and Harris? Diving into the deep end of financial waters, we start with Donald Trump. Trump's economic policies have long been grounded in the principles of business growth, deregulation, and tax cuts. His belief? That by reducing the corporate tax rate, businesses will have more cash on hand to invest in their operations, employees, and innovation. It's a top-down approach, one that's been both lauded for its pro-business stance and criticized for its perceived lack of support for the average American. On the other side of the economic coin, we find Kamala Harris. Harris's stance on economic growth is a stark contrast to Trump's. She's championed the cause of social equity, advocating for policies that aim to shrink the wealth gap and lift up middle and lower-income families. One of her key strategies? Increasing the federal minimum wage. Harris believes that, by putting more money in the hands of the American worker, the economy will see a bottom-up surge of growth. Furthermore, Harris has been vocal about her plans to increase corporate taxation. According to her, corporations have been benefiting from the economic system at the expense of the everyday American for too long. By increasing corporate taxes, Harris argues, the government can fund more public services and initiatives that directly benefit the American people. However, it's important to remember that economics isn't a one-size-fits-all field. What works in theory doesn't always pan out in practice, and the effectiveness of these policies will largely depend on a myriad of factors, including global economic conditions, domestic economic health, and legislative cooperation. Thus, the economic landscape of the U.S. could take two very different paths under Trump and Harris. Whether it's Trump's top-down business-focused approach or Harris's bottom-up focus on social equity and corporate taxation, the choice ultimately lies in the hands of the American voter. Next up, we explore the crucial issue of healthcare. As we all know, healthcare has been a hot-button issue for many years now, and it's one area where the differences between our two candidates are starkly evident. Let's start with Trump. His approach to healthcare has largely centered around dismantling the Affordable Care Act, more commonly known as Obamacare. Trump's vision sees a significant role for the private sector in healthcare. He envisions a system where competition between private healthcare providers drives down costs and improves quality. However, critics have pointed out that this approach could potentially leave millions of Americans without affordable access to healthcare. Now, let's turn our attention to Kamala Harris. The vice president's approach to healthcare is quite different. Harris is a strong advocate for expanding the Affordable Care Act, aiming to cover more Americans and provide more comprehensive benefits. Her plan incorporates elements of universal healthcare, an idea that has gained traction in recent years. She believes that healthcare is a right, not a privilege, and has called for substantial public health investment to ensure every American has access to quality healthcare services. This contrast in healthcare policies is more than just a difference in political ideology. It's a difference in how each candidate views the role of government in ensuring the health and well-being of its citizens. Trump sees a limited role for government, with the private sector stepping up to provide services. Harris, on the other hand, believes in a strong role for government in healthcare, ensuring that every American, regardless of their income or circumstance, has access to the care they need. In essence, the future of American healthcare could pivot dramatically based on who takes office. Moving on to a matter of global concern, climate change. Climate change, a topic that has increasingly become a political hot potato, has seen two distinct approaches from our presidential contenders. On one side of the aisle, we have Donald Trump. His stance on climate change has been, to say the least, controversial. Trump has often expressed skepticism about the extent of human involvement in climate change. He has repeatedly emphasized the importance of industry and fossil fuels to the American economy. His administration has been known for rolling back numerous environmental regulations in the name of economic growth. This America First perspective has led to the U.S.'s withdrawal from international climate agreements under Trump's previous term, a move that has drawn international criticism. Now let's shift our focus to Kamala Harris. Her approach towards climate change is far more proactive. Harris has been vocal about the need for the U.S. to rejoin international climate agreements and take a leading role in combating global warming. She has underscored the importance of transitioning to clean energy and creating green jobs as a means of boosting the economy while addressing environmental concerns. Harris believes that economic growth and environmental sustainability are not mutually exclusive, but can instead be two sides of the same coin. The contrast between these two perspectives is stark. Under Trump, we could expect a continuation of policies prioritizing industry and fossil fuels, potentially at the cost of environmental sustainability. On the other hand, under a Harris administration, we would likely see a significant shift towards green economy and environmental responsibility. Clearly, the U.S.'s role in combating climate change would drastically differ under Trump and Harris. Finally, we look at the potential changes in the Supreme Court under Trump and Harris. The Supreme Court, often viewed as the final arbiter of justice, could experience significant transformations depending on who occupies the Oval Office in 2024. Let's begin with Trump's perspective. The former president has a conservative view on Supreme Court reforms. His focus is on appointing constitutionalist judges, those who interpret the Constitution as its framers intended. Trump believes in preserving the status quo, opposing any changes that could potentially disrupt the existing balance of the court. His tenure could see an emphasis on conservative jurisprudence and a strict textual interpretation of the Constitution. On the flip side, we have Vice President Kamala Harris. She represents a more progressive stance toward the Supreme Court. Harris advocates for term limits, breaking the tradition of lifetime appointments for justices. She argues that this could bring fresh perspectives to the bench and prevent stagnation in the court's decision-making. Furthermore, Harris pushes for an ethics code for justices, aiming to maintain the highest standards of conduct and impartiality. This comes in the wake of concerns over ethical transgressions by justices from both ends of the political spectrum. The contrast between these two visions is stark. Trump's approach leans towards maintaining tradition and upholding the framers' original intent. Harris, on the other hand, seeks to modernize the court and ensure its ethical integrity. Thus, the direction of the Supreme Court could shift significantly under Trump and Harris, shaping the legal landscape of the country. Having examined these key sectors, we can see the stark differences in the potential future of the U.S. under Trump and Harris. The economy, under Trump, would likely continue to prioritize business interests, while Harris could focus more on social equity and environmental sustainability. Healthcare could see either a push for a more privatized system under Trump or a move towards expanded public healthcare under Harris. On climate change, there's a clear divide with Trump's more skeptical stance contrasted by Harris's commitment to tackle the issue head-on. Lastly, Supreme Court reforms present another divergence, with Harris advocating for term limits and an ethics code for justices, while Trump prefers to maintain the status quo. These contrasting visions underscore the high stakes of this election and the vastly different paths the country could take. Regardless of the outcome, the 2024 election will certainly shape the future of the United States in significant ways.